Computer.
Good afternoon, and welcome to this special edition of Yana's Town Hall, hosted by the campaign's Youth Caucus. My name's Glenn Houlihan, he, him pronouns, and on Monday, excitingly, I'm going to be starting a full-time role with the campaign as Youth Caucus and Media Coordinator. Yana's working today, so can't be with us, but thankfully I'm joined by two brilliant members of the Youth Caucus. Jacob, would you mind introducing yourself first and just telling us a little bit about why you got involved with the campaign?
Oh, yeah. My name is Jacob, he, him pronouns. I met Yana at the Southeast Wyoming DSA chapter, and after that, I got inspired to help out and hopefully help her win this campaign. So.
Awesome. Donatalia, give us just a quick intro.
Yeah, so my name is Donatalia Austin. I'm a part of the Youth Caucus as well as a part-time graphic specialist for Yana's campaign. My pronouns are she, her, but I'm gender nonconforming. And I'm just really excited to talk about Yana and a little bit about her campaign and the reason why we're here supporting her as Wyomingites supporting a progressive candidate.
Fantastic. We thought a good way of just framing this discussion would be to briefly just talk about a policy that each of us is, really excited to support, a part of the campaign that we personally perhaps have a connection to. I can start us off. So healthcare is something that I really value and I think is so crucial to living a healthy, happy life. I think it's absolutely essential. And I guess my angle is I'm from the UK, so I have the privilege of being used to the National Health Service, which I think is something many of us back home take for granted because it couldn't be more different here. I think a good way of sometimes just framing it is that healthcare back home is run for people and for the country, and healthcare here in America is run for profit. And you can really tell how unfair and callous the system is when you just turn on the news and you see people who cannot afford to pay for essential healthcare, who can't afford medications they need to survive, such as insulin for diabetes. Or in my case, I have severe allergies, so I need an EpiPen. I need to carry it at all times because you just don't know when you might react to something unexpectedly. And the the cost of an EpiPen to the consumer, as it were, to the patient in the UK, it's $15, and here in the US for exactly the same product, it's $700, and that's not right. And that's because the pharmaceutical companies have such a powerful presence, such a huge lobby in Washington, and even on a state by state level, and they have that power and influence to cut legislation that is going to enact price caps on essential medicines. And this is something that we discussed last Sunday in Yana's Medicare for All Town Hall. And if this is something that interests you, I would really recommend you have a listen. I say many of the similar things, I guess, but we really do have time to get into the nitty gritty, I guess, of healthcare policy, which is something I find interesting. And I guess one more thing that Yana's campaign stands for that I really, really am proud of is how pro-worker she is. That the campaign supports unions, and especially supports cooperatives. And workers owning the mean of production is something fundamental to, I think, any socialist, even any democratic socialist. I think it's a really important thing that workers can create goods to be shared with each other, and enriching a community instead of just some higher ups, some executives that profit off the work of other people. And I think a great demonstration of this inequality currently is CEO wages, whereby many CEOs, especially in pharmaceutical companies, can earn upwards of 300 times what the median average income is for an employee. I don't think they work 300 times as hard. I think the system is designed to just profit off the work of a lot of people, to really, as we discussed, just enrich that few. And I love how bold Yana is in standing up for workers, and that's all workers. She isn't just cherry picking a few people. It's every single worker, no matter what company you work for. It's not the worker to blame. It's going to be people higher up who are making these decisions that really negatively impact communities. So that's my stance. Yes, and they're the policies that I am really excited to support. Jacob, what are you thinking of at the minute in regards to policies?
Right now, considering that uprisings happening due to the killing of George Floyd, I think it's really important to underline Yana's um, commitment to social justice. Um, she has outlined really clear policy in a lot of different ways, from um, reforming the justice system, addressing uh, like addressing the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women,
Mm-hmm.
and reparations. Her policy really reflects a listening voice and fighting for the justice we need in America, what people have been calling out for a really long time.
Absolutely, and I think language matters, especially with events over the last few days. You use the term uprising as opposed to riots. Could you just explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to show that these aren't just senseless. These are people who have no other options left. They peacefully protest for years, almost 100 years. People have been fighting for these rights, and sometimes the only way these systems listen, especially when the police come in and beat up peaceful protesters, is to start fighting back, eh, breaking buildings, and I think it's important to underline that it's not a riot; it's an uprising of people for justice and change.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just to touch more on language, it's been really interesting to see how both liberals and conservatives have united around a common talking point, which is blaming out-of-state agitators. This is a pretty time-old method of trying to break down coalitions that are building, especially between especially between protesters who may not be used to, organizing together. And it's very interesting how the Minnesota governor, Tim Walz, and mayors of cities in Minnesota have directly blamed out-of-state protesters. And they actually falsely said, literally yesterday, that the vast majority of people arrested have come in from out of state to cause trouble. And it's quite interesting. So an investigation by Care 11, which is an NBC affiliated station in Minneapolis, show that local jail records indicate quite the opposite, that the majority of people arrested in Minneapolis are from within the state. So it's frustrating and it's sad to see a point that has been used even during the civil rights struggle in the 60s. There was a really direct effort to call black protesters communists and to link them, especially the decades before, to the Red Scare. And it is so interesting to see these things repeat in 2020. I think that really, to me, and I'm sure to us, underlines how little has changed. There's the same talking points used by both liberals and conservatives. And as you mentioned, Jacob, the police response has been, I, I don't want to use shocking because we shouldn't be shocked anymore, but I think it's been sickening. I'm sure probably all of us saw the two police cars in New York yesterday literally accelerate into protesters, right? The protesters were in front. And then to make it even worse, a supposedly liberal mayor, Bill de Blasio, blamed the protesters and said that there was nowhere else for the police cars to go, which, as you can see from the footage, is a total lie. They could have reversed. There was absolutely no need to accelerate into what looked like almost hundreds of protesters. So it is interesting. I think we need to be critical of the media narratives that can be built, and of the way these things are reported. And that's why I think using terms such as uprising is so important, because we need to empower the protesters and support them, and do the best that we can. Although we in here, I'm in Laramie at the minute, might not be able to be on the streets ourselves, but we can still do as much as we can to be good allies. Yeah, I don't want to tell you. Yeah, if you want to hop in on that discussion or tell us a little bit about a policy you like.
Absolutely. So, and I agree with everything that has been said. And I wanted to add that in Chicago, there was large protesting as well, and a lot of it was peaceful. And what ended up happening was that once brief one, sorry, that
That's okay.
that the bridges in central downtown Chicago were lifted up, and then hastily the mayor, and I apologize, I cannot remember the mayor's name, had issued a curfew pretty much insinuating and implying a mass arrest of protesters who overall were protesting peacefully. And I think it's really signaling to the idea that we need to acknowledge that both in main media is having a critical eye, like who's saying it, who's earning, you know, the sensationalization of media and protesting. You know, main media and larger corporated media will often get more sensationalization and more views if they target the violence of it instead of the meat of these uprisings. And I think that's important to acknowledge too in our discussions, to see this, as well as like continuing the conversation of that although I can't help go to uprisings, I can do stuff at home in my own communities. Because it happens in Cheyenne as well, even though they didn't necessarily want to talk about it. So on that note too, I think that the demand for abortion is really important, and that should be something that is taken very seriously, and that should be my right as a woman who does not want biological children, who is bisexual and may not want to go down on that path. And currently, I have to go to a completely different state. And then when we talk about workers' rights and workers' inability to pay even paycheck to paycheck, or even have access to cars or reliable cars, when they end up not having all comprehensive sex education and access to free birth control, we damn them to worser wages and poverty because they get pregnant, they're not able to get aborted, or they're shamed for it. And that should be a basic right for every woman and all genders that deem that important for themselves. And so that's really important to me, as well as indigenous sovereignty, because I believe that as someone who's a fourth generation Wyomingite, whose great-great-great-grandmother came here on a wagon, it's important to acknowledge that the land that she grew up on was not hers.
Yep.
And to acknowledge that, and, you know, to be aware that that's true, and what can we do to repair those clearly ignored obligations that we have to our Native folk.
Absolutely. No, thank you for those points. Just on the abortion one, I think I totally agree with you. I think you said it so well. And Yana also makes a point of supporting medical practitioners who perform abortions, to protecting them from harassment and legal consequences. And, you know, we've seen, you know, you see these horrendous scenes outside clinics across America, right? Being, you know, being picketed by people, you know, patients being screamed at in the faces, practitioners being basically harassed. And yeah, I totally agree with you. And access, this is part of access to healthcare. And I totally agree with you. And, you know, procedures such as this, in my opinion, should absolutely be covered by Medicare for all. And it's totally interlinked. So yeah, that's I'm so glad you brought that up, and I totally agree. And yeah, on indigenous rights, like, we're on indigenous land. Like, people always forget that. And, you know, I think we're hopefully going to wrap up in a second, but we can tie the right to protest. We can probably compare what's happening now to Keystone protests, to protests against basically the abuse of indigenous land, and the horrific response from police, you know, arresting protesters, intimidating protesters, harassing them. Yeah, so I think you can really see the structural issues. I think what I love about this campaign, I'm sure all three of us are so excited for, is there's the small picture, there's the zoom in on Wyoming, and there's also there's the zoom out and the look at America as a country. And just these structural things that are designed to oppress people, especially communities of color, especially indigenous communities. And, you know, there is ways around this. If we work together and we come up with some, you know, coherent, progressive policies, which we have on this platform, that are so inspiring, change is possible. And already I've met so many amazing people in this campaign, especially the Youth Caucus. And it really is inspiring to hear so many united voices, especially, you know, in a red state such as Wyoming. People still want progressive change. We shouldn't give up on a place just because historically people have voted red. I don't think that's wrong. And I think the campaign also recognizes this binary between D's and R's, you know, isn't as, you know, straightforward as people like to think. You know, there are Republicans who probably agree with a lot of our talking points, and there are Democrats who hopefully agree with a lot of our platform, the vast majority of it. Yeah, so I'm just conscious of time. Ironically, the Youth Caucus was struggling with technology. But yeah, I just want to say thank you. Does anyone want to have just any more last words, or should we just wrap up? What do we think?
And I just wanted to say thank you for hosting and being the moderator for this discussion. It was quite nice to hear from you and Jacob on how we all agree on Yana's campaign, and that for us, Yana really is somebody who wants to see the best for everybody in Wyoming, regardless of whatever political affiliation that deems.
Absolutely, and thank you both so much for your time, and for giving up almost over an hour because of the technical difficulties. But it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you both, and I'm so excited to work with you as the weeks go on, and we get voting in August. If anyone watches this and they want to join the Youth Caucus, please feel free to give me a message. Give any of us a message. There's a dedicated Facebook group, which is amazing. And we are running specific phone banks for the Youth Caucus over the next couple of weeks, where we're going to reach out to younger voters in Wyoming so we can really connect on that level. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you, John, Talia, and Jacob, for being with us today. And hopefully we will work with you all in the future.
Thanks.
Thanks.